guys, and welcome back to the channel. So I finally decided I'm putting power steering in my EF hatch. Now, I know some of you guys are gonna frown upon this because these cars, technically the 80s and 90s cars, don't really need power steering because they work fine without it. And it feels a little bit more sporty, I guess, with the manual steering. You can feel the road better and all that. But it is a nice to have. I've owned a lot of EF hatches and CRXs over the years, and I would say out of all of those, my favorite to drive was my JDM EF6 CRX 1.5X. Now that car came fully loaded. It had power steering and all of the power options in the car. Now, it was so comfortable to drive, so easy to park and all that. With a manual steering car, you guys can relate. When you're completely stopped, it's just very difficult to turn. I mean, it's not undoable, but you gotta put a little bit of muscle into it, and I don't think that's ideal. This here is my forever EF. It's probably the last EF that I'm gonna be building or getting to own essentially. And I'm never selling this thing. So I'm putting all the comfort features that I like in the EFs into this car. Now I've already got all the power options like power windows, power mirrors, as well as working AC. All that's left is power steering. Now these cars did come from the factory with power steering, but unfortunately you have to buy an automatic to get it in power steering. That's not ideal because then you have to convert it to manual and all that kind of stuff, and that's a little bit more work than required. And also that is the traditional hydraulic power steering system, and over time those are definitely prone to leaking fluid and all that kind of stuff. It's just the way the system is designed. Over time it just ages and leaks happen. I did consider that option to install that into this car, but it's a little bit too much work to put in power steering using that method because one, I have to find all the parts. I need to find from an automatic, and I have to get the rear subframe, power steering rack, which is the hydraulic one, all the lines, pump, reservoir, all that kind of stuff. And that's a lot of stuff to put in there, and plus it's going to add load to my engine, and I didn't want to do that. What we are going to be installing today is a complete plug and play kit that's made for this using a Prius, Toyota Prius, power steering column. Now, this is nothing new. People have done it all over. The Miata community has done it all over. You essentially take a Prius power steering column and adapt it to your manual column, essentially adding electric power steering. Now there are companies, there is a company out there, or multiple companies essentially, that make kits for random cars essentially. Now I purchased a kit from a company called Epowersteering. Now I'm not sponsored by them. I had to purchase this at full price and all that, and it came at a whopping $2,200 Canadian after taxes, customs, brokerage, and all that. So some of you guys are probably thinking, oh, holy crap, that's a lot of money. You could technically buy another EF for that price. And you're right. But as mentioned, this is my forever EF, and I want to add all the comfort features to it. And, honestly, I could have done it cheaper if I wanted to fab the work myself and source all the parts to do it, but I didn't want to do that. This is a complete plug and play kit. So it makes it easy for me to just take my old stuff out and put the new or refurb stuff in. So what we're going to be doing today is we're going to be installing electric power steering into my EF hatch. Now let's go and take a look at what we got in the box, and we'll get to the installation. All right guys, so this is what's inside the box. We've got our power cable here. This gets run to the battery. We've got I guess a connector. This connector in here goes to the power cable, and then there is a potentiometer here as well with the fuse tap. So this essentially activates the ECU of the power steering unit, and this is the ECU here, plugs into this section here. This is the power steering motor, it's essentially. So this is what gives you your power steering. This is what they've adapted from the EF. Essentially this part got welded onto this part, which is the Prius part, right? So we basically have a EF steering column to a Prius part here, and this goes on top like this of the motor. And then these are just two joints. This here is, I guess, the part that attaches to your steering wheel. This part is attached to the steering rack essentially. So we basically hook this up
and then we should be good to go. So as you can see, this is all the pieces are in the box, and it's very straightforward to really install. So I'm gonna go and put some of this stuff together, and then we're gonna take apart the stuff that's inside my car. One of the things that I am going to do is I'm gonna swap out this lever here. This is the tilt, and this one is not in the best shape. It has scratches all over it. The one in my car is obviously mint. So what I'm gonna be doing is undoing this and popping this off and popping mine on. So I will have to remove mine first. And you have to remove like the original one first anyways, because you have to put the key lock cylinder and all that kind of stuff. So we're gonna get to removing whatever's in the car first, and then we're gonna install all this good stuff. All right, first thing I'm gonna be doing is removing my steering wheel. And this is just gonna be all these bolts essentially. With that removed, the steering wheel comes off. Next, we're going to pop off this plate, and we'll disconnect the horn here. Next, we're going to remove this hub, which is going to be just one bolt in the center there. We're just going to take that off, and this whole hub will come off. As you can see, that's the bolt right there. Take off the hub. And this is an authentic momo hub, by the way. So one thing I'm going to do is I am going to disconnect my battery first. I just don't want this to be touching ground and then start triggering and beep, beep, beep. So I'm going to go and disconnect my battery. Doing this kind of work, you always should disconnect your battery first, but you know, I sometimes don't. But I'm going to go do that, and then we're going to remove this. There we go. Off, and it is a locking nut. And then we just got to wiggle this in, and it comes off like that. So before we do that, let's just turn this back so the wheel is straight. There you go, wheel straight, I think. And now we can pop this off. Then we take this ring off. This basically locks in this plate here. All right, now the steering wheel is removed. We could remove this cover, which has a bunch of screws on the bottom here. So these screws here, you just gotta take these screws off. I think there's 3, and then this cover should come off. There you go. So you just gotta squeeze this cover in here and there, and it'll pop apart like that. Be careful, because this is quite fragile. I don't think all the tabs are on here anymore, because you know, it is old. So next, we're gonna remove this whole assembly. I believe it's just 2 screws that are holding this piece in. And then it should just slide forward and slide out. And we could disconnect the... There we go. Go. These are all disconnected. Huh. Oddly enough, these are actually super loose, so I guess they've been loosened over time. And this should just slide out like that. All right, with the switches out, now it's just to drop the column. So there's a few bolts holding it, but I'm gonna look at the wiring first, just to make sure that I get any of the wire out of the way before I drop the column, because you know, last thing I want is for this to drop and tug onto the wires. So I'm just gonna go and clean that up, and then we're gonna go and drop the column. All right, so here's the steering column cover. This covers up the joint back here. So we're gonna have to remove this so that we gain access to the joint, so that we can disconnect the joint from the whole steering column before we actually unbolt the whole steering column and drop it. Yeah, I took my mats out. Look at all that dirt. I gotta vacuum up. I also took my pedal out because I got something dropped behind the carpet. So I had to take my dead pedal off so that I could get back there. I got the nut that I dropped. Now, this is the joint that we need to disconnect. Essentially just disconnect this bolt here. The new joint will just plug right into here. All right, so now we're on the bottom of the column now. There's, I guess, some 12 millimeter or 14 millimeter bolts here. So it looks like there's 6. So 2 here, and then there's 2 here, and then the column should just come right out. All right, it's hard to see, but I'm down to the last 2 bolts here, and one more right behind here. I'll have to hold this up while trying to remove it. So there's one more bolt left holding this rack. Put this one here. Very hard to do this and hold the camera. Right, that's out. Now I could just pull the whole rack out now. As you can see, it's kind of falling down. So back joint there, as you can see back there, it just pivots, so it'll come right out. So I'm going to pull this out, and then we'll get to removing the lever and swapping it over. All right, so this is a look at both of them side by side. Obviously, the right side is my original, and then the left side is the power steering one. As you can see, this has been modified. If we just stack it up pretty much evenly like that, they are pretty much like identical, aside from whatever. But we do have to, because this gets in the way of the vents, we do have to remove those. I'll show you guys how to remove those in a sec. But yeah, it looks like a couple things I have to swap over. One, my key lock cylinder. We'll have to swap that over to here, and then we'll have to swap over the lever. The lever should be pretty straightforward to swap. All it is take off these 2 bolts, comes out on that end, and you pop it off. So we will go ahead and take the lever off, and then we'll swap mine over. All right, so let's get to swapping this lever. First thing is just to remove this set screw, I guess. It's just to attach it here and hold it in place. I've marked it so that I know how to put it back afterwards, but it should be pretty loose on here, like so. And then all you do is just pop it off. It's supposed to hold in on the bolt, so we'll pop this off. Now it opens up this screw here, and all we do is just unscrew it, and this whole thing should come off. I guess it is reverse, so we have to actually tighten to loosen. Didn't know that, so just be careful. And that comes off like that. You just have to know how to put this back on after, so it just kind of loops on like that. So we could do the same for the other side, being careful not to damage it or anything like that. Oh. Just like that, we're swapping this one over to here. All right, I got the lever swapped over, and now I have a mint lever on here. Now we can just assemble this stuff because, you know, essentially this has to be a full assembly. We do have to take off this key lock cylinder. So a couple things with this key lock cylinder here. Behind here is 2 bolts or screws that kind of snap when you torque them down. What we have to do to get these out is probably cut a slit into them. They're not super tight, so cut a slit into them and twist them out that way. And then we could probably find something to replace them with. I'm not sure what the sizing is. Looks like it might be an M6 or something like that. But we'll see. We may have to reuse them, but if I can't find a right size. But that's why we have to cut some slots into them. So we'll do that a little later. For now, let's assemble the whole motor and all that stuff. Just move this one out of the way. Essentially, this piece goes into here, and it has a set screw here, and it kind of matches up with this hole here. So we will loosen up the set screw, and then we'll put it in first. All right, so let's loosen up the set screw. And it's loose, and then we will slide this on. It should line up. No idea the torque specs on all of this stuff. but for the most part, I guess hand tight should be good enough. Now these screws here, take these out, or these bolts. One thing I don't like is how ugly this wire loom is. I may redo this wire loom later on in the future, but I'm not going to touch it for now. Just want it in for the time being. And I guess this goes in like this. And it just lines up, I believe. Alright guys, I finally managed to get this piece bolted onto here. It just wouldn't fit through. It's supposed to slide through like butter, but it did not. Instead, it was just kept jamming. It just wouldn't go through the bearing on the top here. Instead, I had to find some really long bolts that I had, and I just basically put it through here and I pulled this piece down into it until the bearing cleared. So now it is cleared, and then basically it wouldn't fit through this housing here. So I had to slowly tighten them down until it actually sit flush. Now it's all good. Just gonna tighten them down one more time just for safe measure. And then we could take a look at how we could put this into the car, essentially. Doesn't have to be super tight. I think most of this stuff ends up being like tightened down to like 30 foot-pounds at most. So there you go. That's as tight as it goes right now. I took the back plate back off, but we could put that back on afterwards. This essentially just sits in the back here, and then we are able to hang this onto the car. So I'm just gonna go and test fit this to see where the clearance is, and then we'll come back to this afterwards. All right guys, so it is very difficult to fit this thing, not much space. The motor essentially goes into this area here. This is where the vent tubes are, and we have to remove both of these vent tubes to be able to fit the motor up there. This bracket also has to come out, and it will get replaced with this bracket here to hold the motor up top. I'm assuming holds on like this probably. Yeah, that looks like it makes more sense. So as you can see, this holds the back of the motor, and there's no clearance because we need to remove these tubes. So we'll try and move these tubes. These should be fairly flexible, and you just kind of side to side them and they should be coming out. So let's see if I could get these out like so. Yeah, I got one side already. It is clipped on the side here, so it's open, but I need to kind of clear the other side. So I'm going to see if I could just gently pull these out and then refit the motor to see how to get this in. All right, here are the two tubes removed for the heater. So now I won't have this side heater and I won't have the door heater, essentially. Those are the two things that it impacts. Not a big deal. But yeah, these are tubes. Pulled them out, and they're still good. Very flexible tubes. Did get a little pinched here, but that's okay. A little bit of heat would fix it. But we'll set those aside, and now we'll try to refit the motor. All right, so while bolting this stuff up, I encountered an issue. So this is the one that this bracket came with the electric power steering. As you can see, it is significantly different from the one that was on my car originally. So I have swapped mine over. Now I'm just going to tighten everything up and bolt it up and see if I could get it to line up. Essentially, this thing was not lining up properly, and the bolt holes was just leaving such a huge gap. Like, as you can see, like, these are the holes compared to that. I don't know what's going on here and what's the difference or which car that one's from, but essentially I need to use my own. So luckily we're able to just easily swap it over. All right, next we're going to be cutting some slits into here so that I can take off my key lock cylinder. Other side. Yep. So I'll go finish these up by cutting in a slit all the way through so that I could probably reuse these. All right, so I have put in the steering rack. It does fit for the most part, as you can see up there. It does hit the heater. Let me see if I can get a shot of this. All right, so as you can see right there, the corner there, it's a little hard to film upside down and all, but it is hitting the heater. So switching to, like, say, feet or your windshield, it's going to be a little difficult because it just gets jammed every single time. So it is very tight. The heater controls may not work 100% because of this. All right, the last piece before the wiring is this joint piece here. So there's a flat end on the joint. Make sure that lines up with this bolt hole area because it's for the bolt to go through. Then this would just basically cover off just enough the teeth here. And then there is a bolt up here where we would, you know, lock it down so it doesn't move. I'm going to go ahead and tighten everything up before we start on the wiring. All right, guys, wiring wise, the power cable, we're just running it right to the battery. So as you can see, all I did was I put it right here and I put it right here for the ground on this side. So it's hooked up to the battery straight, and I ran the wire right through to basically the harness grommet right there, right underneath the fuel filter. So that is where I'm running it. That's how I ran my tucked harness as well. So everything is running through that one grommet. Now it is already inside the car. We're gonna start wiring it up to the ECU. All right, so I put my, I guess, steering column cover back in, and unfortunately it rubs. As you can see, it was already broken. So when I put it back, you can see that area, the tape kind of came off. So it is rubbing against the new steering column. So what I'm gonna do is, because this is already broken, I'm just gonna modify it. So I'm just gonna chop it like right around here, so that it has clearance and it doesn't rub anything. Because as I was actually testing out the steering wheel with no power, you could actually hear it going click, 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 and it's because something is hitting this this steering cover. And I want to have this cover on there just to have it looking almost OEM. So we're gonna just modify it. There you go. It is modified. All I did was took some scissors and I just cut it. So it's not the prettiest, but it'll do. It'll still look better in the car, covering everything versus just having it exposed. All right, guys. So I've run the cable, the power cable, into the car now. As you can see, it is in here. Now we're gonna have to put in the connector, and this is the connector here. Now, what we're supposed to do is wire it identical to this, basically black on the bottom and red on the top. So black on bottom, red on the top. So I'm going to pin that into this grommet as well. And then we're going to plug it into this ECU. And then we're going to plug this controller in. We're going to have to tap in some wires into the fuse box. So just putting a ground in, and this goes to one of the fuse taps. So let's plug it all in, and I'll show you guys after what I've done. All right, guys, here's the ECU all plugged in. Here's all the cables that I run. All you do is put this connector in. They only go one way, so this one will fit on this side, this one will fit on this side, and this connector will fit here. This connector is just pretty much for the potentiometer. The potentiometer is hooked up to here, where I have the fuse tap here, as well as the ground, which is up here. And that's where I ground most of my stuff. So let's plug in the fuse here to the power cable, and then we'll test this thing out. All right, the fuse is plugged into the power cable. Now we could go and put it onto ignition and test everything out. All right, let's start by scanning myself in, and then we'll put in the key to unlock the steering wheel. Okay, it's really heavy right now because there's no power steering, and then we're going to turn it on to ignition. Now with the potentiometer, we have it all cranked all the way to 0. So right now there is no power steering, no power assist. So we're gonna turn it right now. Oh, even with no power assist, this actually feels a lot lighter than before. Now let's turn it on to, I guess, maximum, and see how that goes. Takes a little bit of time, and then, oh wow. So literally one finger. That's amazing. Could totally see the benefit of having this. So it's all working. I just need to tuck in all the wires and all that stuff, clean it up a little bit. It is a little bit of a mess right now, but we've got everything working. And then I will be mounting the potentiometer in this spot where my alarm LED is usually. So yeah, everything is going to be mounted up. Car's not on right now, and you can see that there's a lot of power steering. And this is on maximum. And even if we turn it all the way down, it is still pretty good. Well, it's getting stiffer now. It takes some time to adjust, but regardless, this feels awesome. All right, guys, everything is fully installed now. There is the steering column cover that I had to modify, and it doesn't make any noise anymore. It's just sitting there. This is where I hid the ECU for the power steering. So it's just sitting basically right beside the fuse box, or behind it a little bit. But that's the only spot I could find where the wires would just reach. Everything else was really tight, I guess. As you can see, there's the wiring right here, some of it right above the dead pedal. I've also gone ahead and removed my push start. It was just a pain in the ass to always have to like step on the brake and rescan the RFID chip. So I removed that. So now it's all fully like stock again, using just the OEM key to crank. And I've hidden all my wires and everything nicely behind here for my alarm and for everything else, essentially. As you can see, that's how all the wiring is underneath here. All right, so let's go for a drive to test this out. There is a little bit of a noise on the ring here that retains this cover. I'll fix that later. I think it's just been bent out of shape from being removed so many times. But yeah, we'll test out the steering. From backing out of the garage, it's already really smooth and easy. I can easily one finger doing all this. It's set at about medium setting right now. So the resistance isn't at the lowest. There's never a time when there is no resistance on this thing. There's always going to be some sort of resistance. As you can see, like, it drives completely fine. I'll go over some of the things that I've noticed when I drove it the last time after the install. So when you're putting it on the lowest setting, which is just like all the way to the left, there's never any time where it's off, right? So at the lowest setting, there is no return to center. The car actually has to be manually steered back to center. But right now, based on what I'm driving right now, it's at medium setting, and the return to center works completely fine at a medium setting and up, essentially. So as you can see, the car does spin on its own, the wheel, which is what we want, because you want it to drive like a normal car. I've also tested this out by pulling the fuse. If you want no power steering completely, just pull the fuse and the whole system will be disabled, essentially. And it drives completely like stock with no power steering when you pull the fuse. So right now, as you can see, all these little turns that I'm doing, it's super easy. I'm just using fingers here versus gripping the whole thing. In the past, I used to obviously hold the whole thing and pull it. It's a lot more stiff. You guys can relate. If you guys have the same car, it's stiff to drive. But this, you can literally one palm it. It feels like just a modern car with some power steering. As you can see right now, I can just do a one finger turn. We'll do it at the upcoming intersection here. So as you can see, I'm just using one finger and I am turning it. This is not something you can actually do with the stock no power steering, and this feels great. Honestly, it feels phenomenal. Is it worth the $2,200 Canadian that I paid for it? Maybe not. It is quite expensive, but I'm pretty happy with it. This thing is completely fully loaded now. It has all the options I like, so it's basically everything all in one, like in the EF that I really love. So as you can see, all the driving is super easy, smooth. It just drives like normal, but with some power assist, which is great. Yeah, this rubbing of the ring really annoys me. I gotta fix that. Make it a little tighter so it stops rubbing against the hub here. But yeah, it definitely drives amazing. Like, it's super smooth, very responsive. drives practically like stock except with some power assist. Everything is tucked away nicely from the installation. It was quite a bit of a challenge doing the installation because it's a tight space, right? The only thing is you lose the driver's side vents, the door vent, and this left vent here. But everything else works, all the other vents. It is a little tight when you're trying to switch where, like say the windshield or which kind of vent you're trying to use, but that's kind of what you have to take with this being such a tight install. But aside from that, I'm really happy with it. It drives great, drives very smooth, and I can literally one palm everything, so it's amazing. Yeah, effortless steering.
There you go, guys. We have electric power steering in the car and it works amazingly. Now, a couple hiccups along the way. One is that Epowersteering did send me a wrong bracket. I had to swap my own over to get it to work. Now, understanding that these are used parts, and the bracket I'm talking about is the tilt bracket that you probably see in the video. The one that they sent with their steering column had like this weird bracket where it just doesn't fit there. Like, how do you even get a bolt in there? The holes are too big and everything. Nothing will fit. It needs some sort of spacer. It's definitely missing stuff on that bracket. It looked like some custom welding work was done on it. I don't know. But luckily I was able to swap out mine over to that one. I didn't actually contact them or anything like that because I understand it is used parts that they merged together to make a kit. So maybe they won't even know the difference either. But if you guys are installing that kit, highly recommend double check that bracket, because when you bolt it up, which is what I did, it just doesn't line up, and the space, the whole column just doesn't line properly with the wrong bracket. Even though it's out by a slight bit, it just doesn't work as well. So, you know, luckily we were able to make mine fit on there, and there was no welding that made it permanent on there. So we could just unbolt it and bolt the new one in, and that's it. The other thing is obviously the tilt lever was not really in great shape. Again, that goes to the whole thing about it's being used parts. Not a big deal. Mine was in very minty shape, so I swapped mine over. Well, since I had to swap the whole bracket over anyway, so you know, it ended up for the best anyways. I got to use my parts onto the already customized steering column. The other thing is, yeah, it does suck that we have to lose the vents here, this one and this one, but not a big deal. Just open a window, essentially. The space back there is very tight. So because, I don't know if it's different with the CRX, because the CRX is electric climate control, but with the EF hatch, it's all manual levers, and where the motor sits up high, it actually hits those levers where you could switch from, like, say, front facing vent to like windshield facing vent to the feet facing vent, that kind of stuff. It's actually very tight. You know, it works, but it's very tight because it's rubbing in there. So I wouldn't suggest using it, you know, too often by switching it, because likely you might wear it out faster because it is rubbing against the motor. So, you know, it's very tight tolerances, but that was expected because, you know, we're fitting such a big motor into the you know, dash here, essentially. The other pain that I had to do is I hated seeing that rat nest of wires. I have since cleaned up all my wiring in here and it's nice and neat now. But that goes to show, like, you know, when you keep adding more accessories and adding more accessories, it just ends up piling up and piling up and piling up, and then the wires just kind of get out of control after a while. But because I have everything already wired in, all I have to do is tuck all the wires and make sure it's nice and neat. But aside from that, everything works. So we are golden. Anyways, guys, I hope this video helps you guys out. If you haven't already, please comment, like, and subscribe, and share my videos. As always, guys, I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.